Sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Good morning, everybody in Dyslexia land. Welcome to Empower Dyslexia. I'm Stephen Yearout.
And I'm Rachel Chambers.
As you know, we're here to help you become a better partner in education. On the show, we discuss dyslexia and related disorders or disabilities.
Yes.
We speak on research. We talk about intervention, special education policy. We also interview experts in the field and people with personal stories.
Yeah.
Yep. So
thank you for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.
And catching the show. Today we have, well, first off, I want to say that today is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, World War II. So I just want to say, I don't know, thank you. I think is the right word. Thank you to all of our troops and all of our military that keep us safe. And I mean, really, thank you to all the men and women who serve and were at D-Day and fought in World War II. You know, my grandpa was one of those.
Yeah,
he was in the Army. So anyways, they're celebrating over there. I have a friend over there with her grandpa, and she flew him over there to Normandy, and they're on the beaches, I think right now, or maybe it was last night. I'm not really sure. But they got to go to the celebration, which I thought was really, really cool. So the one thing I do want to say, because, you know, I'm somewhat political, is how we can give back to all those men and women that have fought for our country is to go out and vote and use that power that they fought for to continue our freedom. Don't you agree?
I would agree.
I get like all,
I mean, there's a reason why.
Vote for everything.
There's a reason why our troops have fought for our country and put their lives on paid the ultimate sacrifice to make sure that our country is able to do the things that we can do here, the freedoms that we have, you know.
Continue our democracy and go out and vote. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but I wanted to say thank you and vote. Okay, so today in the studio we have very special guest, Dr. Penny Stack, and our topic today is dyslexia, the lived experience. And Dr. Stack is a doctor of occupational therapy. She's the founder and owner of the Dyslexia Center in Tulsa, and she flew all the way down here to be with us this morning, so I appreciate that. She has over 26 years of experience working as an occupational therapist and including special needs children. So good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So let's get this talk on the way, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's start with this. Can you give our audience just a brief description of who you are and what makes you so special?
The journey.
When I say so special, because you are very special. I mean, the discussions that we've had, you are the expert in the field that we want to bring onto our show. We want people like you. You know, we want to make sure that we bring the most relevant information forward. And that's why you're here.
Well, thank you. It's hard to get my head wrapped around that word expert. I think I'm just really sharing just my experience to really help others, and that's kind of where it all came from. So like many children out there, I was a product of special education. and struggled in college. I actually flunked out of college twice and just really struggled with that whole process. And when I, somewhere in between my master's degree and my doctorate degree, I decided I wanted to be a mom. So I had my daughter, and it didn't take us long when she started school kindergarten to notice that she had some significant difficulties, but we couldn't figure out what was wrong. We spent the next 3 years or 4 years till third grade till we had her diagnosed. And we had gone through several what I call misdiagnoses at the time. And what I mean misdiagnosis is I would get the reports and they would tell me what was going on and what I should see at home in school, and it's not what I was seeing at home or school. So I kept scratching my head thinking something's not right. So once she was diagnosed, it triggered two things. One, I thought I could get her help and we could fix it. I didn't know anything about dyslexia at the time. And number two, I was like, oh wait, this sounds like my story. So I was also diagnosed. So the apple did not fall far from the tree.
And that's kind of how it tends to go.
It does. And so I came home and I spent a lot of money and time on programs that didn't work for my daughter. And when I say didn't work, some said they could cure her, some said they could remediate her, but it was temporary. Nothing really stuck. And as an occupational therapist, I kind of sat back and thought, if I did clinical practice like this, I wouldn't be in practice anymore.
Exactly. That's how I feel about it.
Right. And
It's
so
You were already an occupational therapist
yes,
at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was an occupational therapist before I had my daughter, and had been for, well, I don't want to do the math. It's been a long time.
while, though.
Yeah, it's
A
been
while.
a while. And in my master's program, my research was centered on traumatic brain injury. And so all of a sudden the light bulb went on. The two things that people with a traumatic brain injury and dyslexia have in common is, one, they both have a brain. It really is that simple. And if we can remediate some of these things with somebody who had a traumatic brain injury, who had neural pathways damaged, what if we did the same thing for somebody who had dyslexia and had a neural pathway that wasn't developed? And so that's how all this came about. And as I was going through this journey and creating the clinic and getting everything going, I just started to get to know a lot of people. And I realized my story wasn't the only story. And that's part of what prompted me to pursue my doctorate work and pursue the research on the lived experience, and to really share more of a broader scope of what dyslexia really is and what it isn't, kind of like the truth.
Right.
So that's the backstory.
And you talk about talking to people more and more about dyslexia. What's crazy, it doesn't matter what continent you're on, how old you are, what race you are,
Socioeconomics.
whatever,
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't
Does
discriminate.
not
The
discriminate.
stories are so eerily similar that you could just take one name out and pop another name in,
Absolutely.
and there it is.
Yeah.
So, we know what the problem is, and we understand the stories. Let's move on to fixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
say fix it. Let's remediate it.
Let's
Yeah.
do
What-
something to
something.
support them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So tell us about your research. Well,
Yeah.
first
Like,
off,
how did
you
it-
went and got your doctorate.
Right.
Where'd you get your master's
I
degree?
just woke up
she
one
is
day
a fellow
and-
Oklahoman.
Right.
And so did you go to OU or did you go to
I
OSU
did
or
not.
where'd you go?
it was all in California.
Oh, you got out.
Surprisingly, I
you-
was started there.
Did you take the buggy out there, on the grapes of
Yeah,
wrath?
I did. Yeah.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
So, no, you're fine. I actually started at Loma Linda with my associate's degree as an occupational therapy assistant.
Okay.
And went on to Cal State San Bernardino, did a stint in healthcare administration, and then came back to OT and did my master's degree at Samuel Merritt College, which is now Samuel Merritt University, and that's in Oakland, California. Okay. And then, years ago, that was in 96, and then I had my daughter, then we had the problems, and in 2014 or 15, I can't remember, that's when I went back to Loma Linda and pursued my doctorate work.
Okay. Very cool.
So
I love
all about
California.
I know, it's beautiful, the beaches, yeah.
Yeah,
How
it's
could you
nice.
not want to do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, and the thing that formed the question, or what brought the question to mind, was we see social media just bombards us with skewed information sometimes. Some of it's good, but we either see people who have this gift and are catapulted into success. We've all heard the superstars and movie stars names, and they're all over everything. Or then we hear the opposite of people who are in poverty or in prison, or, but what about people who are just surviving? What's it like?
In the middle.
In the middle, right? And there's a lot of them, and that's where the research was focused. What's it like for them?
Good. And so I think we have a slide on her research, Ziggy, if you could put it up. There it is.
Yay.
Yeah, so tell us about this.
Okay, so this was done at Loma University, and I was very fortunate. Loma University partially grant funded this research, the occupational therapy departments. That was great. And in collaboration with Dr. Julie Kugel and Dr. Arzu Salamat and Dr. Jessica DeBron, we as a team came together and worked on this research. And so I interviewed about 14 individuals. It was a small naturalistic qualitative study where really you're just chatting, having a conversation is what it is. And I asked them, hey, what's it like to live with dyslexia? The interviews were about an hour long. And, I didn't know this until I was doing research. Like, they tell you this, but doing it, it's the hardest thing because you cannot be involved in the conversation. So I saw tears. I heard gut-wrenching stories, and I just wanted to reach out, and you have to sit there because then you become part of it. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that's how powerful these interviews were. And I think the age ranges were about 12 to 50. So I did cover quite a bit of the lifespan. And after I interviewed them, I had the recordings transcribed, and I started breaking it down into what we call codes or categories, if you will. They started talking about bullying, every comment about bullying, whatever it was, came up with probably 300 or 400 different categories. I mean, it just, kind of like the rivers that are overflowing with all the flooding right now, that's kind of what it does in your life. And so then we had to kind of narrow it down to 3. That was fun. Okay. So that's where the 3 results come in. So I came up with...
Slide back up.
Yeah, we came up with the story of my life. And what this really was is, how do they others perceive them? And it was skewed. So take a look at Candy, and she says, it makes me feel like I'm worthless, like people think I'm worthless. I mean, she was like maybe 14 at the time. That's not what we want our teens to think, right? And the interesting thing is, if you go over to the grit, and the grit, I referred to Dr. Angela Duckworth's work on grit. And it's a combination of passion and perseverance. It's despite all odds, I'm going to dig deep and I can get through this. And so it's that balance of getting through life. And that misperception of your value in the world is what influences your roles and occupations. And when I say occupations, I'm not talking about getting a job. That's what I think everyone thinks of when they think of occupational therapy. But think about a role that you might have in an occupation or an occupation within that role. So maybe you're an artist, and part of the activities you need to do is get the paint, do the drawing. So it influences decisions you make. For example, I wanted to go to med school, but didn't think I was smart enough. So I chose a different route. And I don't think people realize that that's what's influencing their decisions. And so that was a lot of what we got out of the research. And when you look at research, I think it's really important to ask, well, so what? Why is it important? Why does this matter? Because if you notice, this doesn't talk about reading. Right? And we always think that's
the emotional
what dyslexia
part
is.
of it, right?
Yeah, the emotional part. It's really, I think when we work with people, we always need to remember the person that they are. That's what we should address first. And so this research shows that literature supports that occupational therapy should be at the table, right? We can work on visual perceptual skills, visual motor, but we can also work on that psychosocial, that helping them deal with what's going on. That's a big part of what OT is. So it really begs for OT to be at the beginning, and not as, oh, by the way, I think we might want to invite you over.
Here's a pencil grip.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Here's a pencil grip
we got.
and a chair to sit in that's modified. Yeah, no. And then also, the other thing to think about is people with dyslexia suffer from memory deficits, anxiety, and depression. And according to the Center for Disease Control, I just looked this up recently, in 2017, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among the individuals from the ages of 15 to 24. And we want to change that trajectory for sure.
It's a terrible
and that
statistic.
Exactly. But more importantly, the research looks at broadening that treatment plan. So yes, address reading, but if we can heal and work on their self-confidence and their self-esteem and empower them to have their own voice, that will just take them so much further than here's your phonological awareness and your phonological memory. And
this is how you read.
Yeah, and now read. Exactly. It's just so much a deeper appreciation for who they are as a person.
Gotcha.
Well, and if you go ask 100 people what they think dyslexia is, you're going to get 100 different answers. And maybe even, I mean, the biggest one is, it's, you just flip your B's and D's around backwards, right? Or the words just run off the page. I went to a...
it may be like that for one person, but it may not be the same for another.
I
it's
went
like
to
a snowflake.
Yeah, I went to a dyslexia experience. I took my wife and my kids, and I thought, well, now I'm going to get to show my wife what it's like to be dyslexic. And of course, each station was something different. And I literally became angry within the first 5 minutes of sitting in any of those classes. I mean, it just sent me over the edge, right? The one that made me the maddest was we went to a reading simulation, and they were, nonsense words or whatever these people were trying to read. And they were describing what the person goes through. And I go, hey, look, we read just like everybody else. We don't see, some other word. We just don't know what the word is. So don't think that we're flipping B's and D's around and words are flying all over the page. So I think it's really important to understand that piece of it, that what it is, what it really is, and kind of lay to rest some of these misconceptions.
You bring up a super good point, and that point is what people think dyslexia is. So I went out and asked people after I did my research, what is dyslexia? I asked just like random people, and they gave those answers that you're talking about. It's letter reversal. It has something to do with reading, something to do with learning. But then when you really sit down with somebody who has lived with dyslexia, it's interesting when you listen to them, they don't mention reading. They don't mention all the intervention they've had. They mention how it impacted their life, their feelings, how people have treated them, how their teachers have treated them, parents, and they bring up positive and negative. It's not, I don't want to paint this picture that it's all negative, but it's impacting them in a way that I don't think providers are understanding. And so there's this miss it's like two ships in the night. Here's the treatment we're going to provide you, but here's what you need, and they never come together. I think that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that.
There's a lot of scars.
Well, they're not scars. They're open wounds.
They are, because they don't heal.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're not addressed. Think about, there's significant research out there that shows whenever the trauma occurred, emotionally, that's where you still are. Even though you've aged.
Read that. Yeah.
So yes, it's still, there are some wounds that are still very open.
Yeah, and it's not hey, you just need to get over it.
Just try harder.
Yeah.
What's the best way, I mean, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, what is the best way for these students that have dyslexia to help them emotionally heal some of those wounds? I mean,
ask them.
Just ask them and talk
Have
about
a discussion. Talk to them.
Yeah, instead of telling them what you're going to do for the day, ask them how they're feeling. Ask them. Yes, I wish I had my phone with me, because I got this great letter just a month ago from a teacher that came to my conference, and she said she was working with a child who, walls were up, fixed mindset, lots of poor behavior in the classroom, disruptive. And she said she took that one thing back from my presentation of meeting them where they are. And she sat down with the little boy and asked, what is it like to live with dyslexia? And she said he just opened up and talked about his feelings and how hard it is and the struggle. And she was able to have that conversation and let him know, this is normal. We can help you. I'm going to be right by your side getting through it. And she said, after we had this moment, she said he sat up straighter. He wanted to work. She said his light came back in his eyes. So just connect. It's that human connection, feel with them. That's the biggest thing you can do for these children.
So you're saying start off when you have a new pupil, new student with you, how are you feeling? Or after you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and establish some rapport with each other. Once that's established, then say, well, how do you feel? How does dyslexia make you feel?
Yeah,
and just listen.
Right, and they may not even know they have dyslexia.
Or whatever their problem is at the moment.
You know, how's this going for you? Or how's that going for you?
So once they get that load off, sorry, I hit the mic, y'all. Once they get that load off, then they're going to be more receptive to taking in the information.
And you know why? Because that time you took with them validated that they're a person. So now they're vested in you because they know you're vested in them.
That's so powerful.
You've got that piece of it. You don't know if that child was able to eat breakfast or dinner, or what social or emotional trauma is going on at home. If you don't have that connection, you'll never be able to get through them to teach them
or even
anything.
Understand them, understand where they're coming from.
They're going to be the trouble kid that gets sent to the office, and people want to go, oh well, he's just being lazy, or he's just being stubborn, or he's just this, he's just that. Now with all of this world about don't label me, now you've labeled me as a problem child, and you'll never get me. You'll never be able to teach me anything.
Yeah.
So we have a real interesting philosophy when we work with children, and we have 4 things that we always keep in mind. We never tell a child no. We never correct them. We never give them the answer. For some reason, the 4th one's escaping me. Or
probably don't give them praise unless the praise is actually... Don't give them false praise is what I'm trying to say. False praise.
Right.
Oh, you
Be
did
truthful.
good, but you still misspelled the word. So they didn't do good. So don't tell them that.
Right. So, but how do you do that in a positive way? So that's a great example. So we'll talk about spelling. So maybe you ask them to spell the word cat, and they spelled it K-A-T. Typically, the first thing we would do is correct that. But we are taking away a learning opportunity by doing that. So the approach that we would take is we would look at it and say, hey, you got all the sounds in the word right. Acknowledging effort, and they have good phonological awareness. Yes, they got the sounds. That's awesome. Can you think of another sound, another letter that has the similar sound? And then when you get to the letter C and think about that, talk about the rules of C and why it's different. I was just having this conversation the other day, and when I said, make the comment of saying, great, you got the right sound, the person said, I hear a but. I said, you will never hear a but, because but invalidates effort. So but doesn't belong in the conversation. You just go on to say, prompt them. We need to empower them to solve their own problems, to think it through, to give them those skills, because we need to move away from unintentionally teaching learned helplessness by giving them the answers all the time or correcting them.
Can you just, I don't know, do you have it as if or an example or something of
learned helplessness?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is a great example.
Okay.
So think about doing puzzles with a child. They put the wrong puzzle piece down. What do we typically do?
No,
right, exactly. Like, you lose now. So we'll tell them it's not the right puzzle piece or whatever, but you can cue them and prompt them, point to the picture, point to the puzzle piece, have them trace it, give them cues to prompt them. But I had a real interesting experience with a little boy. He finished his puzzle, and I asked if his puzzle was the same as the picture. I was careful not to say, is it right or wrong? I want to see what he's perceiving. The first thing he did was look at me. And I have a horrible poker face, so I purposely don't look at the children when I'm telling them. I'm like, hey, so does that look the same? And I can feel the heat of their eyes burning into me, and I don't look up because I want them to have that uncomfortable moment of saying, oh, wait, I have to figure this out? They're looking at me because that's worked for them in the past to read your body language, and adults have always told them if they're correct or not. So we have done a great job teaching them learned helplessness. Why would they have to rely on their own skills? They're always being told. So now I'm pushing him back into that uncomfortable range where he's going to have to check his work. And lo and behold, it was right. And that's a great
and then
learning
he feels
moment.
Great.
Achieved.
Yeah.
Because he did
on
it
his own.
On his own. Yeah. We've empowered him. That's key.
So when you're sitting here describing this, the only thing that I can play in my mind is parents being so frustrated with their kids during homework time that they finally just go, you know what? No, that's not right. Here's the right answers.
Right.
And they're doing it because they're frustrated and they don't want the child to fail. And they're just going to go ahead and help them get through the answers just so it's done.
Right.
Well,
So, I mean,
maybe 10 o'clock at night and they're still working.
That's when
And
you start
still
emailing the
working.
teacher
There's
saying, hey,
frustrated.
look.
And everybody's just like,
So, I mean,
They
that's,
just
that's
need
a
to
great,
go to bed
that's a
so they
great
can
point
start
that
over
you're
again.
talking about is if that skill's not there, we're not going to move on any further.
Right.
We need to stop, allow that child the ability and the opportunity to grow. And if it doesn't get done today, it doesn't get done today. We're going to go back and fix this. We're going to go back and revisit this.
And this is based on Dr. Duckworth's work on grit, but also Dr. Carol Dweck's work on mindset. And this is facilitating that growth mindset, that they have intrinsic ability to change the outcome on their own. That's very powerful for them to
Right.
be able to do that.
And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've done that with my kids.
I think we're all guilty
Yeah,
of it
we
at some
just-
point. We're just not perfect. But if you realize that you're doing it again as a
You
parent,
can pause
like,
quicker
okay,
and recenter.
reset.
Yes.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why in our 504 meetings, we say, hey, look, he's going to have 3 days to finish his homework. It's going to be an exception, not the rule. Your homework does not supersede or allow to throw our family into chaos.
Right. That's huge.
I will make sure that my child does his, well, I only have boys. I'll make sure my child does his homework. However, if we don't get it done, we don't get it done. And I'll make sure that we get it done in the following days. And if I send it back, it's because he hasn't grasped that concept yet.
That moment of teaching them recovery and struggle is huge. What happens when they don't get into the school of their choice, or they don't get what or they don't understand, and they feel so horrible about themselves? All of us, no matter what goes on in life, and this is not exclusive to dyslexia, get to that point where we feel like a failure.
Oh, yeah.
And I love failure because that's how we learn. So anytime my daughter has an opportunity to fail, like, I'm all about it. Like, I get excited because it's a life learning moment. I'm like that kind of
Yay,
mom.
you failed.
Right? Because I see the other side of that. And that's where us as parents and us as providers, really, that's where the learning comes in. And how do you sit down with them on the floor and work them through that? How do you recover from that? What coping mechanisms are you teaching that child? And then how do you transition them back into stepping up and doing the task? Again, back to that growth mindset and grit.
That's so
And in
true.
jiu-jitsu, we say either you win or you learn.
That's
You never
exactly
lose.
right.
You're going to get tapped out and you go, oh, I shouldn't make that mistake again.
Right.
And you're either going to ask, well, how did I get there? Or you're going to be in that position over and over and over again until you realize, I may want to ask for some help.
That's right.
It never
It's
hurts
a
to
pain,
ask.
it's a painful lesson, but it's growth.
You talk about asking for help. I find it interesting with the children that I work with and some of the children I interviewed for my research. They are scared to ask for help. And I didn't understand that at first. And I've actually had children tell me, well, I ask my teacher, I go sit down at my desk, I have forgotten, I don't understand. So they go right back up and teacher said, well, I just told you, go sit down and think about it. And they're shut down. Or the teacher or the parent may make the unintentional mistake of repeating it exactly the way they said it the first time. So my little hack tip is, if they come up to ask you the directions again, that's your first clue not to say it the same,
Exactly.
because maybe they didn't process
They
it.
didn't interpret it
Right.
the way you explained
Right.
it.
So now show it to them, do it differently, have maybe another student that's doing it, show it to them, but try to find a different way to explain it.
Make sure that they understand it before they go away.
And make it a safe environment
Yeah.
for the child to feel really good about asking questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Very cool. So why don't you tell us what was the overall conclusion of your research?
The overall conclusion was, in my mind, that dyslexia is not just about reading.
Hallelujah.
There are a multitude of characteristics of dyslexia, and I have searched my mind trying to figure out we have somebody that comes to us with dyslexia, reading. It's almost like a steel bars coming up that joins those two together. And if we work on reading, they'll be fine in the world. And that is such a miss because there's this whole person behind that we have to put the pieces back together. And so I really feel the outcome of this research is to make sure we're pulling that telescope back and we're bringing in all the professions that can address every need for that child. And as a team, bring everything together to help provide the child the support that they need. And to give teachers the support that they need.
Yes.
This is not, this is a little bit out of the teacher's area of emphasis, and they can't do it all. They want to, they have the heart to, they're trying to, and when they fall short doing it, they feel bad. And it's not because they're not qualified, it's just not their area, their niche.
I've spoke to many teachers, especially after they've received some dyslexia training, that come back and talk to me bawling, saying, I've sat there during that presentation or during that training, and I named off every student that I failed in my mind.
Yes.
That's killer.
So you are so, they want to help.
Yes.
They don't know. And if they haven't been trained, if your district is not doing the proper training just to understand or help identify these kids, telltale signs, you're going to put a teacher in that emotional place also, that they have failed, not by their own accord, but they still feel that failure of themselves because they know little Johnny and Sally and Bobby and whoever
probably had dyslexia that went unnoticed.
And that's exactly what it was. And I didn't catch it.
Yeah, and you talk about not catching it and kind of overlooking all of that, and that brings up the whole idea of trauma, or the whole concept of trauma. So the reason I feel like meeting them where they are, call it like step one,
right.
Meeting them where they are, is because there's research that shows that if a child's gone through trauma, that can look a lot like ADHD or a lot like dyslexia, and they don't have those things, but they'll be diagnosed with those things, treated for those things. The trauma's never resolved, and the treatment's not effective. So really finding the experts who can pick up on these little nuances that are so subtle and different. And what is trauma? Some of it could be perception, right? So a child being retained is indeed trauma, but the experts, not the experts, but the people immediate to the child may not see it that way because the child wasn't in a house that burnt down, right? So it could be perspective of that's not trauma, or they don't realize that being picked on at school.
So
or
can you
things
repeat
like
that again?
I don't know. Which one?
No, just the beginning of that. A child being retained is trauma.
That's detrimental.
Yes.
I can tell you right now.
Yes,
So
retention.
a child that has been retained is a traumatic experience for that child.
I was retained, and I can tell you I still today feel the feeling of watching my friends go on to the next grade
and being
and
left
knowing
behind.
I'm going to be left behind. And those were still my friends for a short amount of time, but they went on, and I was left behind.
It's traumatic. It's
It is.
traumatic.
You lose those human connections.
Yeah. And you feel like there's something wrong with you.
And
You didn't succeed. You failed.
You're
and
inadequate.
it's the failing in the bad sense of failing, because you're not like, oh, I'm going to learn a different way. No, you're just going to repeat the whole grade again.
You're not good enough.
You're
Well,
not
and
good
that's the question I asked when they wanted to retain my son was, what are you going to do differently?
Exactly.
They wanted to put him in summer school. I said, you had my son all year long. What are you going to do differently in 4 weeks that you couldn't do all year?
And there is research evidence
good
out there,
question.
exactly, that states that retaining somebody with dyslexia actually is more harm than good. It serves no outcome. And the miss of all that is, in the short term, it looks like they've improved. But because all those other areas that are required, to address reading weren't addressed, then as the years go on, that gap comes back and the gap gets bigger over time.
What you've just said is my son or my daughter is the problem, not your teaching methodology or the program.
That's right.
Because you've retained them.
Right.
My brother was retained in second grade, so he took second grade.
So
over
now
again.
you've just put that on top of them also.
And it was very sad. Like, he still has a hard time with it. I think he wouldn't say so, but he sure doesn't like talking about it. So, but he's good, and he's good, successful, happy for the most part. I
Something
think.
else you said was being able to. Number one, I perceive it as being able to look at it through the child's lenses also. Not only the child's lenses, because you think, okay, well, I'm going to look at it from their perspective, but their maturity level.
That's key.
Because, yeah, we can sit back and go, okay, well, if I was in third grade right now and I did this, you have a completely different perspective because of your life experience. You have to put yourself in that child's perspective with that child's mentality and
Their
where they're
emotional
at. Their
ability
emotional
at that
everything.
time.
Then you can make a decision on what's best for that child. But if you can't do that, then I'll keep that comment to myself. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, just going back on the whole being, left behind or not passing and having to repeat a grade. I don't know how they can change that, because that's been going on for centuries.
Parents can say no.
Absolutely.
Parents hear that? You can say no.
Parents can say no. This is your child, right? And that's a recommendation. And you can say no. You don't have to agree to that. You can come up with an alternate solution to provide support to your child, but retention's not
Mandatory.
Okay.
I would take that to task.
What about the whole no pass, no play?
That's something completely different. No
I
pass,
know,
no play.
but if you're not passing, but then yet the kid is, that's their life, is to play that sport, and that's the only reason why they're or whatever that extracurricular activity is, and you've taken that away from them as well.
Lived it.
It's like, I know.
But
Here's my personal opinion on the no pass, no play.
Yeah.
I think it's really meant for students who are just not doing their work. I mean, just blatantly can and have the ability, but they're just out having a good time.
They haven't been diagnosed with anything, or maybe they should be
But
evaluated.
No. I really think it's for the kid that's just goofing off.
Okay.
I don't think, in my humble opinion, and this is not research based, and I just want to make it clear to the viewers, this is just my personal opinion. If they are doing their absolute best to their ability and they are putting in the work, I'm not talking about give them a prize for showing up,
Right.
but they are doing the grit and they are digging in, and that is the best they can do. Playing will save their life.
Right.
Because playing will give them the self-esteem and confidence that they are a valued person. And if we keep saying fail, 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 now we're going to take away the one thing you're really good at, we need to go back to those suicide rates.
Yes.
And so we're breaking them, and we need to nurture them. So I like all rules. I wish we could just use them in a more responsible way to keep our children.
It's not a
with
black
the
and
intent.
white thing.
Yeah. That's
It's
Well,
like
they do-
if you're not passing, no play. But
Right.
there's all this gray in the
Yes, there's a
middle
lot of
that you
gray.
need to address or to at least look at.
From what I've been told now,
It's just not numbers, no number.
Your IEP or your 504 committees can determine whether that child can still pass or play.
Nice.
Now, not when it first came in.
No,
And
not
that's
with
new to
you.
me. I did not know that. So that's good information to share with parents.
Yep.
That
So
could be put into their IEP.
But
if-
that's via not special, not 504. That is
Well, you need to have that
special
discussion.
ed.
You need to have that discussion that, hey, this is the one thing that my child excels at.
I mean, do we
And I
want
say
to...
one thing, but this is something that
They
they excel
enjoy.
at without
and feel good about themselves.
without the effort that they do and the failure that they feel within the classroom. This is the thing that keeps them in school. This is the thing that keeps them going, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whatever it is. We need to make sure that is a focus in their life, along with making sure that we're giving them the proper remediation.
Well, and what's the end game? Is the end game to raise a well-rounded human being? Or is the end game to do the square peg round hole and force them to do something that they're struggling with?
And that there's no tolerance. There's
Right.
no tolerance of this type of child. And so eventually they're going to, I started school, I'm from Ardmore, Oklahoma, and we had about 250, 260 kids in my freshman class. We graduated only 180. So I think I'm not doing really good math, but that's at least a quarter, maybe a fifth of the school that dropped out. It's like, well, what happened to those kids? What happened to all those dropouts?
And if we don't,
and why didn't they, at least get their degree? You know, and what did they do? And what did my school do back then? And they may have done everything they could. Maybe they just moved away. They all just moved away. But what did my school do back then to keep them in the school? And then there's the whole alternative school over here. It's just like, I just worry. I worry about those kids, the ones that don't have, the parents' support or any kind of support for that matter, even if maybe they don't have parents, but they have a grandparent, that is supportive, or maybe they're, it's just, it bothers me.
it does, and it should bother you. These are,
Because what's going to happen to them?
that's exactly where I was going. So these are very formative years. What goes on in their life and the words that are spoken to them matter and will impact them for the rest of their life. And if we don't show them grace, and if we don't provide the support, how can we possibly expect them to go out into the world and provide grace and support? They will do what they're taught. And if they're disposed of, then they will dispose of others. And that's not the world we want to live in.
That's not the community we want.
No, right. So it's a
It's not the country we want.
And it doesn't need to be this complicated.
Well, the scary thing is, we have a pendulum, right? So for, the last 30, 40 years, whatever, the pendulum has been, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. Well, now you're hearing people say more, we don't have enough tradesmen, so we need.
And that's
hey,
true.
You have dyslexia, or you have learning disability. You know what? You'd be a good plumber. Let me see
Yeah.
your hands. Oh yeah, you'd make a
Yeah.
great plumber. Send them to trade school. Which this pendulum is starting to swing back the other direction, which is going to be a dangerous, in my opinion, is going to be a dangerous swing, because why not educate the child properly, remediate where it needs to be remediated, and allow that child to decide what type of occupation that they want to go into.
Right. Their
Right.
vocation should be a choice.
Instead of funneling kids towards
right.
certain.
And that pendulum shift from college to career tech or type of vocation is also, the other weighing factor is also the cost of rising tuition.
Yeah.
And the time spent versus the college debt. So that is the other influence on all of this as well.
Well, I mean, you go to trade school, it's pricey.
But it's usually not 4
Short-
years.
yeah, it's a short amount of
right?
time.
And so you're not spending $30,000-$50,000 to get a job.
Right.
True. So, I caution people on the whole, well, we need tradespeople, we need tradesmen. That's great. We want these people to have these jobs.
But if they want to go in that route.
yeah, let's
Yes.
make sure that
have
they're
choice.
educated and they actually have choice versus they have an option.
Like, this is all you can do.
Well, that's because
That's
you
all we're
can't.
going to educate you to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Sorry.
it's
If you
like
wanted
we were
to be
talking
a
about earlier. Do you have a
dentist.
choice or do you have an option? Well, your option is what your abilities are, and your choice is, okay, well, here's all the things that I can do because I have the right abilities. That makes sense. I don't know.
It
No,
does
it
make
does.
sense.
It does. But I think that's where we're, like what you just said, I think that's where our education system is what they're trying to do. I think they're just trying to cipher off kids per their test scores and funnel them in directions where the workforce is needed. And that's not, I mean, in my mind, that's not the American way. That's not the educational way, in my mind. And maybe I'm speaking out of turns and I'm speaking out in la land. But I think if someone wants to become trade, I think that's noble and I think that's great and we need them and they're going to be happiest doing that, then great. But I don't think you should just funnel someone this way because their test score.
What I'm hearing is that that person should be the one to step up and say, I want to do trade school.
Right.
And not be influenced by, this is what everyone's telling me to do.
Right.
So what was
and
the...
well-rounded. If they, just because they're good in science and math, well, what about the arts? What about
Exactly.
literature? They need to be well-rounded.
Do you want to get into the discussion of having music and arts back in school?
Yeah, I know, right? That's
I think it's very important.
Yeah, so let's talk about that just for a brief second, because I do have a comment.
Okay.
So typically, I'm a national speaker, and so I've had the opportunity to visit with teachers and practitioners all over the United States, which has been eye-opening. And it helps me see what is the norm and what some schools are just really doing exceptionally different. And one of the things I saw that was the norm was when children need special services and they're being pulled out of arts and arts and music and things like that. And in my mind, and this is just from my observation, I feel like they should be pulled out of their core classes because they're not processing it anyway. They're still going to need tutoring or something to help them catch up with it anyway. So pull them out of that, because there's lots of research proven that that music and arts help build those neural pathways so they can learn in the classroom, and that needs to be preserved. And if it was my kid, I'd be happy to have her pulled out of math and all of those other things.
And I know
so
it's scary
she can
to
do
be
the
pulled
arts.
out of math because it's a stepping stone.
But you know what? They will learn math and music, and they will learn math and art.
Yeah, but if you're, like you said, if you're not learning it anyway,
yeah.
I can
Or the
sit-
literature class.
At that point, I'm
writing
taking up
class.
oxygen in the room.
And I'm feeling worse about myself at the same time.
Exactly, because I'm not good
Because
at that
Susie
subject.
over there is brilliant and she's getting everything right, and I got nothing. And the teacher keeps calling on me, and I just want to hide under my desk.
But I am
So-
really good at art.
So
And I look forward to my art class every day.
I'll jump back to the dyslexia experience, and one of them was a spelling test. And after they got, the teacher was saying the words really fast and didn't stop, didn't repeat them, all these things. And then they went back and asked, well, at the very beginning of the test, they said, well, Mrs. Johnson, the principal, is going to come down here and personally grade these, and then they're going to go up on the wall and at the front of the school and yada, yada, yada.
Oh my gosh.
And make sure that you're ready. Ready to go. And then she starts reading off these words.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the parents in the room, all they heard was, oh, the other thing was, if you didn't pass the spelling test, you don't go to recess.
Right?
That's
Punishment.
a whole nother conversation,
Right.
too.
So there's all of this thing, and all the parents really heard, though, was the pass or fail. And I sat there and waited till all the parents were done, and I raised my hand. I said, what about, I'll never get my from a child's perspective, I'll never get my paper on the wall. I'm a failure. Why do I even try? Because I'm not going to go to recess. So I'm just going to sit here, and maybe I'm going to kick little Johnny in front of me and see if I can make sure that he doesn't pass, and I'll have somebody sitting here with me. Or I'm going to get sent to the office, or why am I even here?
That's exactly right.
And put that perspective on them, and they were all like, wow, I didn't even think about that. There's so much more to it than whether I spelled, a word right or not.
And the whole recess thing, that should not be used as
Ever.
a behavior modification for them to complete work. They need that release. They have to go out and play. They're already not playing enough on technology. We see so many developmental milestones being missed. Play first. That is their job as a child, is to learn, develop. And if you take them out of recess, you miss an opportunity for them to learn.
This piece of it, the lived experience, because I have experienced it, is very, it brings back so many emotions and everything else. It's really the driving force behind this podcast.
Yeah.
To make sure that, those children do get the help that they need, and empowering those parents with the knowledge to be able to go in and have that conversation, intelligently have that conversation with the districts and the schools, and make sure that they understand who that child is and why we're going to do these things this way.
And Stephen, I'm so appreciative that you chose this as a topic, because there's very little research on the lived experience in the role of dyslexia. It's very hard to find out there. So beginning these conversations and having people ask questions and learn about it is really a value that you're giving. So thank you. For choosing this topic.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. It's a hard one.
And for
too.
sharing and being vulnerable.
Well, it's, and I tell people all the time, I say, look, I got big shoulders. There's a lot of people who are embarrassed about being dyslexic. I'm not one of them.
Bring it on.
I know that by me standing up and saying what I say is very powerful. It's a powerful tool. And I want to make sure people, not that you have to be okay with being dyslexic, that you shouldn't be ashamed of being dyslexic.
Your voice gives children a voice that can't put the words to it. It gives parents awareness to be aware of what they may want to look for in their child. And it gives parents grace to forgive themselves for their own experience. I mean, what you have to say is powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good.
Group hug.
Group hug. Yay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely want to have another discussion about this. And I would hope that you would come back and finish this discussion. Because, I mean, this discussion could go on for hours.
Yes, I would be happy to.
This is definitely a topic that the parents need to hear, as well as our educational staff, and truly take a different approach, a different look at what we're doing for our dyslexic children.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I agree. All right. Okay, so let me get back. Let me click my little thing. Let me know where I'm at. Okay, so we have an event that Stephen and I are going to be attending. It's the Say Dyslexia Rally in Washington, D.C. It's on July 9th of this summer. So wear red, bring your red umbrella.
you can actually buy those umbrellas from the Facebook page, Say Dyslexia Rally.
Okay.
They actually say, they have it printed on the umbrella.
And it says say Dyslexia. Oh, I love it. And I love that they're using an umbrella. I mean, that's pretty genius,
Yep.
I thought. Stephen and I have been asked to speak at the rally, which is amazing. And
Huge honor.
A very big honor. So go to Eventbrite and buy your tickets.
Well, it's
you don't
not
have
a buy
to buy.
ticket, it's free.
Reserve your
Yeah,
tickets.
just
They're
let us know you're
free.
coming.
Yeah, to let them know that they're coming so they'll be prepared with how many people. And then there's more information on Eventbrite about where it is. I think it starts at 9 o'clock, and then how long it lasts. I think maybe it's only like 2 or 3 hours.
Yep.
And then we take a picture at the Capitol.
And then we go
all
speak
of
to
us.
our representatives.
And then we go speak. We go talk, have conversations about how we would like in the perfect world, what we'd like our dyslexic population to have.
Right.
And, talk to them about it. So please attend. We'd love to see you guys. If you see us there, please come up and say hi to us because we like to meet all of you. And I don't know, it'll be fun.
Be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You can hear us on all your favorite apps. iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, any pod, tune in. And of course, we're live on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah. And make sure you like us and subscribe. I know that sounds kind of
Yep, but it helps.
kitty-like, but it does help us to get sponsors, so we're not doing this all by ourselves.
Dr. Stack, thank you so much for spending the time, coming here and sharing your expertise. It means a lot to me to see somebody that has dedicated their life to something that has affected my life so deeply. We'll put all of your contact information, your website, everything up on our website, and we'll post
and your
it
slides.
we'll post it on our Facebook page also. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, that's how they can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. It was definitely a privilege, and I'm almost about to cry. Like, this is a big topic,
Yeah.
and so thank you very much.
Yeah. Of course. Okay, and like we always say at the end, please, if you think something's wrong or something's not quite right with your child in your school, then go to our website. We have these letter templates that you can say to give to your school to ask for that your child be evaluated. And there's a couple there to choose from, and just get the process started. You'll be happy that you did because you'll at least know what's going on. And it's better to know what's going on than to just guess.
What was the old saying? Knowing's half the battle?
Knowing is half the battle. Yeah, something like that. Who said that?
I don't know.
Chuck Norris? I think it was Chuck.
Chuck Norris.
I don't know. Okay, until next time, thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
you.